welcome to Provisionally Approved. I'm Mike Gorrie, and hashtag Gorrie fact, Gorrie can change its own batteries. It just hates doing it.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Taylah Jayde.
I'm Frank.
And so, current events in RMITV at the moment. I understand we've got a new OB kit that's rolling down Swordcraft way.
So it's not an OB kit, but we've got a production in the works that Jess May has been working on, and she's bloody amazing.
Yeah?
It's using like professional standard equipment and all the stuff she can sort of pull together because she's got a lot of pull. Frank?
I'm doing audio for it, so I'm using my Presonus 2442 mixer. It's going to be a test run for that mixer because I haven't used it for anything professional yet.
Yep.
So basically Swordcraft is a LARPing game. So LARPing is live action role play. So we're going to cover it like a sport. So there'll be commentators and a boundary rider and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. So what's it like working on like the sort of live, like outside of studio live broadcast stuff where it's a lot less sort of controlled?
Yeah, there's a lot less control over what happens. So it's yeah, it'll be a bit stressful, but hopefully we'll get it done.
Yeah.
How many cameras are you running for this?
I think we've only got 2 or 3. So there'll be one on the studio, which will be for the commentators, and then one for the boundary. Yeah.
So how does that all work? Do you have like a unit base kind of thing? How does that work? Do you have to have something portable to like?
We're going to have a OB van, or we're going to build one, so that they're going to get in a rental van, and then we're going to put stuff in it.
Okay, so that's still sort of in the that's sort of still in the works.
That's the plan, is to have an OB van that we build. On Thursday.
Building it on Thursday. Yeah. Hear that, set designers, that camera. Well, that's not really set design, is it? That's tech. Design. My bad. But yeah, so for people who've only just started tuning in, let's sort of go over like what's your individual involvements with RMITV. Jack, you're the producer of this show.
Oh yeah, that's fun. So I've worked on a bunch of stuff sort of before this that led up to creating the podcast because I was bored. But I've sort of tried to get as much involvement in as many different fields. You know me from The Ascenders. I'm a trainee producer on that.
No longer trainee producer. You've been promoted.
What am I now?
Yeah, congratulations, Jack. Let's give him a clap.
Now officially post-production supervisor.
Yay, I can sit at the table and eat. So yeah, I'm post-production supervisor on that. I've been editor on Tough Times, and I've tried to do as many studio-based roles as possible through Tough Times because that's fun. And yeah, that's me.
What about you, Taylah? You're a journalism student currently, or going into
going into a Bachelor of Journalism next year at RMIT. Just graduated from Diploma of Screen and Media at RMIT, and I was production assistant for Miss Guide TV show, which I've probably said 100 times in other series. And an active member on this show. So yeah.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me that that you wanted to get into sort of like in front of the camera journalism, like sort of anchoring shows or like
broadcasting journalism.
Generally broadcast journalism.
Yeah, pretty much that. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And what about you, Frank? You've been with
RMITV since 2011. So mostly doing audio because that's what I'm mostly interested in. So I've done Studio A, Live on Bowen, In Pit Lane, many others, can't think of them off the top of my head, but yeah.
Yeah, just the list is just
too many.
How do we memorize that? We can't.
Yeah. Big receipt roll.
Yeah.
Need to just sort of like have them all sort of listed out like, oh, how much time do I spend on that one?
Yeah, I probably should have done that. I should have kept the crew calls and stuff.
Kept a log.
I didn't.
And me myself, I'm sort of the exec producer / creator of The Ascenders, and yeah, sort of in front of the camera on that and on this. Yeah, for those who weren't aware already. We were talking before before the cameras started rolling. We were talking about spoilers just sort of offhand. I feel like we should sort of recap that.
There's one in the room.
I have this thing where I really don't like it when something's been out for a really long time, and this was a bad example of it because, it wasn't out that long, but whenever something's out for like 10, 15 years and people go, I'll watch it eventually, don't spoil it for me. And that's like the biggest pet peeve of mine. If you say don't spoil something for me and it's like Shakespeare, I'm going to spoil the shit out of it for you.
Shakespeare.
And so Frank was we were talking about Sherlock in the office, and Frank was like, hey, don't spoil it for me. I haven't watched the 3rd episode. And I was like, oh, why? He was like, all the seasons end on a cliffhanger, and I don't want to have to live with that cliffhanger.
Yep.
And that's a really good point. I really regret watching the 3rd episode of that season because it has a really bad cliffhanger. And so that little part of my brain that's petty ticked over, and I started not spoiling it for him.
Yeah, he made up a plot that he liked.
Which is a good way to do it, because it's probably better than the ending that was actually in the show.
Yeah, like, there's no cliffhanger. All the big action is wrapped up by end of Act 2. Sherlock dies, and Act 3 is actually Watson getting over that death, and it's a really touching exploration of what life without Sherlock is.
So basically he was saying that the next season would be just Watson.
Just Watson, yeah, so dealing with Sherlock's... Well,
like what happened before, if you've seen the rest of it, how you think that Sherlock's dead, and you're like...
Considering the show starts with Watson basically like not really having much of a life, and he's like, well, what do I do with myself? Nothing happens to me. And then of course he meets Sherlock and things start happening and he loves it. Yeah. And then sort of dealing with the aftermath of that, and then sort of finding a way to like go on and still have it, like that would actually be a really fascinating story.
Yeah. And it's great because Sherlock, the BBC producers behind it, haven't released any footage or any evidence from season 4 that would contradict my stance. Oh, of course. The only thing they've released is that Christmas special, which is going to be set in Victorian England.
Yeah, yeah. There's.
I haven't heard about that.
Sherlock dies in it.
Okay.
What?
Of course he does.
Do you trust him?
I don't trust you at all.
Yeah, so spoilers, like, as a thing, like are we sort of like I feel like we're sort of disagreeing on that front of like whether spoilers are, or like at what point spoilers are okay and not okay.
I'd say they're okay after about a year, but before that, no.
Yeah. So basically, if an amount of time has passed where you could have, were you really willing to watch the show, sat down and watched it? And it's different for like TV series if it's like the entire show.
Yeah.
I wouldn't spoil American Horror Story for someone because that's a long show, and that's like, I understand there's a commitment there. But if a year has passed and there's holidays where, were you willing to? You could sit down and watch it. Yeah, I am.
But I just wasn't willing to spoil it because I didn't want to. I didn't want to have that cliffhanger. Actually, someone actually spoiled Episode 2 Star Wars for me once. A day or two after it came out.
Oh,
They're
man.
like, there's this bit where Yoda does like flips and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
No.
That was in some of the trailers, though, to be fair.
Well,
I remember there being trailers that featured that quite heavily.
True.
And so that was kind of one of the selling points for the movie, that you get to see this thing of Yoda actually turning out. Like, really, they shouldn't have released that trailer because the trailer kind of spoiled the moment. But
it was part of like the prequel trilogy. All of their trailers spoil some major facet of the film.
Don't they?
Like, Episode 1, double-sided lightsaber.
Yeah.
Yeah. They shouldn't have.
With Darth Maul,
What about you, Taylah? Have you had anything sort of major spoiled?
No, to be honest, I've actually kind of something similar to say. I've was really addicted to puberty blues.
Puberty blues.
Yeah, that's I don't know why I was addicted, and I think it's because each episode there was never a hint of a spoiler, so you wanted to watch the next because you never know what was going to happen next.
Yeah.
And that's what just got my addiction going, I think.
Hang on, so as in they didn't have trailers at the end sort of saying, oh, this is what happens next episode, or they?
They kind of did, but it was never so obvious. You'd watch the next episode and it's oh wow, did not see that coming.
Okay, yeah. That's probably a good way to do it. Generally, yeah.
And I had no Jack around, so it went really well.
Jack to give you reverse spoilers.
The system behind Puberty Blues was really good in that there was no real cliffhanger. There was no moment at the end of each episode where you were oh shit, this person's going to die next episode.
Yeah, it wasn't a home and away.
That's what I'm meaning.
Yeah.
Home and away.
They always sort of show what's going to happen around the end of the next episode.
Home and away is so predictable. I stopped watching it. Just so predictable.
You could miss sort of 3 episodes and just sort of see the trailers and you'd know basically what's going on. Yeah.
Or the way they have that dramatic music just before an ad break.
Yeah.
And there's a cliffhanger just before the ad break.
Yeah, of course.
Well, can I just say, I stopped watching it, but my mum watches it, so I go to get something from the pantry, and I legit, by 2 seconds just walking past, I already know what's happening. Just the music, the angles and everything, and just yep.
No, well, see, I remember watching a lot of those shows growing up. Home and Away especially. My parents used to follow that when I was a kid. And it was on right before The Simpsons or right after or something. I don't remember how all that lined up. But I can remember sort of getting sort of really invested in the characters to the point where 5 years of not watching it, I started watching it again in my early teens and was just I still know who half of these characters are and and what's driving them, and it was even though a lot of the characters I wouldn't know anymore, it'd be sort of fairly easy to catch up, and that's almost sort of a testament to, I'm not sure if that's a testament to good or bad narrative design, or
well, for me, Neighbours was very much the same.
They know what people want.
Yeah. It was almost the same thing when I was a kid. Neighbours would be on, and then we'd get dinner, and then there'd be The Simpsons. And so I'd get home from school, get my homework done, watch Neighbours because that's what's on TV, get dinner, watch The Simpsons. But then it became Neighbours, I actually got involved. Well, not involved, but invested in the characters. And they keep the same characters around. You see the commercials where it's 30 years ago, Howard is a character. 30 years later, he's still a character.
Yeah.
But it's good because it gives a realism to the story beyond that which a normal short-run series does.
To an extent, because there's always that criticism of they have to do something dramatic every, say, 3 months. Where there's some kind of life-threatening situation. There's a fire,
there's a flood,
or
they're on a boat, and the boat sinks.
Or there's some kind of crazy stalker. That's happened at least 5 times, I'm pretty sure, in the last decade. But I think with those kind of shows, a lot of the time, because it's so sort of centered on a singular premise. Of it's got this place where everything sort of centers around, and you don't necessarily need to know the characters to sort of catch up fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really sort of matter what the big dramatic moment of the thing is. You can't. Yeah.
In some cases, it does, because there was a character who was really special to me, and there was a wedding, and I saw the wedding, and I didn't see the end of the episode, and the wedding doesn't end well.
Was that D?
Was that D?
Yep. I really liked it. I missed 2 or 3 episodes after that. I come back, I'm huh?
Oh, no.
What?
What? She died? Yeah. No, because I can remember seeing that episode at school, a week later or something, because one of my teachers decided to show us that as an example for something. I don't know what it was an example of exactly. I'm pretty sure it was an English teacher. But And then, like, that was shortly before I actually started following the show for the first time. And the only reason I started following it was because I got called up to be an extra on it.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
So it was like, oh, okay, yeah. If I'm going to be in the background of this show, I'd better pay attention to how it works and what's going on. And that was because previously, like, all the only soapy I'd been familiar with was Home and Away. And shortly after that, I stopped paying attention to any of them. So, yeah. So the other thing that we were sort of bantering about before the cameras started rolling, like I think we were talking about rockets or
rocket ships.
Yeah. So, we were talking about how rockets work in space.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
Keep in mind, I only know what my high school chemistry teacher has taught me. And she dumbed it down a lot.
Okay.
Okay, so just so that the audience is up to speed, like, how do rockets work?
Oh,
exactly.
Don't make me do it on camera.
Can we please have a lesson?
How do rockets move in space?
Yeah, that was what I was interested in, because I always thought that rockets worked by moving the air, but that's clearly incorrect.
So the way I understand it, and
Use this as a demonstration. This could be the rocket ship. There you go.
I'm so glad you actually like found this chance to work that in, because
I told you I would.
I'll need one of these after the show if I'm wrong about this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong about this later. I'll send this to all of my science teachers, and they will give us viewership. But the way I understand it is that when there's that combustion of that fuel source, it creates a sort of outwards force larger than what it would as its inert form. And as it does so, it pushes both out of the rocket and towards the rocket.
Yeah.
So essentially, like in space, whenever you see a character push something away from them to move backwards, that's essentially what a rocket does, but a lot more flamey.
With a lot more force.
Yeah.
Flamey.
I'm not sure if flamey is the correct word.
just that's what it is, but with fire.
Yeah. Which is like the cooler version, right?
Yeah. Well, fire makes everything cooler, right? That's how it works.
Except for bushfires. They're like,
Oh my god,
That
no.
feels a lot hotter, actually.
hey?
They make things a lot hotter, not cooler.
No.
Yeah. That went to a dark place.
Sorry. It's just we had bushfires at our farm.
Right.
But
okay.
anyway.
What can I ask about that? Am I allowed to?
Yeah, you can ask about that.
What happened there?
One of the departments decided to do a planned burn.
Oh, was this the one?
The one at Cobor.
This was the one a couple of months ago.
Yeah, got out of control and it burnt. Burnt quite a lot of fencing and destroyed some people's houses and.
You must have been so angry about that. Like.
Yeah, it's pretty upsetting because they did it back in 2003 as well. So.
Oh wow.
It's not.
So it's
like
not the first time.
Yeah. They're a little bit slow at the uptake.
Well, this is sort of starting to go into your territory a little bit.
Into my field.
Yeah. so coverage of like of I don't know, news words.
Breaking events.
Breaking events.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
If you need a reporter, just give me a call.
Those are the words that are not coming to my head right now.
Covering the hot topics.
The hot
topics.
The
No,
hot
that's
topics.
awful. That's a terrible pun.
That works for me. I like hot topics. But just that sort of thing of like, well, surely that have worked out by now that like the weather starts getting hotter in October now.
You'd think.
That's too late to be doing controlled burns. Possibly.
But I think they had targets that they had to meet because the government wants them to meet a certain amount of
bureaucracy. That's our best friend, isn't it?
Hopefully this isn't getting too political, sorry.
Well, I don't know, how political is bushfire?
Well, it depends. If we're talking, 2000, 2004 presidencies, a bushfire would be incredibly bush.
Oh, no!
Why do you do this, Jack?
This is why I'm not a comedian.
No,
We should. Do you remember there was like a tally board in the office of different puns that people like. It was like
no. Actually, there was one of our main film sets on the Ascenders, which is my cousin's place in Box Hill. He's got this whiteboard in the corner where he tallies up like such and such many days since such and such happened. One of those tallies is like 1,595 days since anyone had sex on the couch. Spoiler alert, that's how many days since they got the couch. So it's literally nobody's ever done it, but he's making sure nobody ever does. But one of those tallies is, such and such many days since someone made a pun in this house. It usually gets to about 9 or 10. And then the Ascenders the Ascenders crew shows up, and you just know that tally is going to be wiped like 3 times that day. and he gets angry about it every single time.
I wish you'd told me about that, because I would have wiped that tally a lot faster if I'd known that like it existed.
Oh, well, because you've been on, how many times have you been actually on set?
I was mainly involved in episode 1 for the on-set stuff.
Yeah.
And we're on like episode 3 and 4 now.
Yeah.
But,
so
yeah.
So you were there a few times. No, it's one of the other ones that always says they're going to be on set and then never is.
Georgie?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's like.
Well, I wasn't going to mention names on camera.
She's.
Now that you've gone there.
Me and George. No. She's got like her reasons to not be there, and she does give us a lot of warning, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
It's just like, for a location-based shoot, getting out there.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got like a life.
Are you saying you don't have a life?
No, I mean, I think we need to sort of accept, like, in the industry that we're going into, like, and journalism included, I think, a little bit, that, like, I think we can give up on the idea of being able to, like, have an outside life during the times when we're working. It's like okay, like we might get a break of a few weeks when I have a life, and then suddenly nope, not anymore.
Yeah. Just production. Yeah.
Just
focusing on that basically.
Or is production just a replacement for that?
Could be.
Or is it a lifestyle?
Go out afterwards, don't you? Like your meals and stuff and.
Yeah, but like that sort of tends to be sort of like within
it.
The production crew. Like you sort of have a life together.
True.
And then not much of a life outside.
It's like a band, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. But I think it's that thing of like, we've come around to this topic like 5 times throughout the course of this show, but like sort of coming around to that thing of like, there's some kind of saying about it, like a band that like something together stays together. I can't remember whether it's plays or drinks or eats or.
I'm not sure.
It's something to do with the way people socialize in their sort of work teams and stuff.
I don't think the crew sleeping together would necessarily help function.
It's not sleeping. The phrase is not sleeping.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's what he meant.
I think it's the eating together, really. Because like, when a crew, or especially when it's the crew and the cast eating together. I remember this from Live on Bowen, and I really liked the way that Live on Bowen got really clicky, but it didn't.
Yeah.
There was these little circles that would form. I was only involved at the end of season 6 in the actual studio shoots, but these little circles would form where people would eat, and then halfway through the dinner period, they'd just disperse, and new ones would form elsewhere. And it was really weird to watch, and I loved it.
That's amazing. Like, I never actually saw that during my time on Bowen, because it was usually like within the crew that would be happening, but like not so much within the cast. Like as in like the cast and the crew tended to be fairly separate most of the time.
It was like the ones that I really appreciated was Peter Jones especially. He'd come out and he'd have lunch with the cast. Dinner with the cast, and I think it was more because like he was personal friends with some of the people on the cast.
Crew, you mean? Or
Crew. Yep.
Yeah.
It was really cool because I haven't seen that much elsewhere.
Although I should like amend what I just said before. Like it usually tended to be sort of cast and writers, and then crew. Like that's the sort of
I
line
agree
was.
with that. It's
yeah.
so true. Yeah. It's usually like the cast with each other, and then it's just like the crew on the other side, and
Yeah.
it's weird.
I think part of it is because like the cliques kind of come like sort of pre-made, because a lot of the time the writers that work with the writers that worked with the cast were sort of already friends with the cast, and then the crew that were working together have worked together on other stuff before, and so like there isn't necessarily that single thing like sort of creating a dividing line. It's just that these people already know each other and these people already know each other, and then like there's no I suppose there's not enough incentive to sort of cross-pollinate.
Yeah.
And there's not enough sort of common ground.
The only common ground is that they're working on the same show.
Yeah, exactly. But they're sort of working on different parts of the same show. So it's like, how do you start a conversation? I don't know.
It's like one of those school dances, when the boys stand on one side and the girls stand on the other.
Well, a little bit. I mean, that dynamic shows up pretty much everywhere, just in different ways. Like, not necessarily boys and girls, but like that thing of like, there will be some kind of dividing line that sort of just separates two groups. And then, like, if there's no, like if there isn't, say, like a few different people that do, that are sort of part of both in different ways, then there won't be any movement.
Yeah.
That's why the Catalyst co-productions are really good, I feel, because there's, not only is there that division between cast and crew, but neither really has any reason to mingle, and they recognize that. Like, we divide, the cast know that the cast are there for the writing purposes and the cast purposes, and the crew know that they're there to film it and sort of wrap up. And so any commingling that happens is a very cordial thing. It's a very professional atmosphere just because of that.
That's interesting. So that's a good thing in that respect.
In regards for getting the show created and getting it put out, it's probably the most professional atmosphere we've got.
And so professional as in like a little bit like not really like relaxed and casual, like as in a little bit awkward?
Not awkward.
No?
It's just they know what they have to do, we know what we have to do, and there's no division.
Oh, okay. So it's just like sort of practical stuff. Like okay, they'll talk about work stuff and then split off. Yeah. Okay.
And so no room for jokes on set and all that stuff?
There's room for jokes on set. There's apparently no room for puns.
No room for puns?
Oh, wow.
So I had to stop going,
you'll really struggle in that environment, I feel like.
Well, that was Georgie's production. And she did not take it when you guys were not around. It was bad.
Hang on, didn't take what?
Puns.
Okay. So like she tends to sort of like just be a bit dismissive of them when we're in like the Ascenders sort of production meetings and stuff. But like
she's a little more dismissive when they're like, yeah, because I was the only one making puns and yeah.
Do you get like sort of everybody sort of yelling about that, or is it everyone's just like
it's just
a little bit of a groan, or
it's like a bomb of silence.
And you're responsible for it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the worst.
I dropped that bomb and everyone just looks at you like, why would you do that?
Puns used to be like the height of comedy. Back in like the 1800s.
Yeah.
That's what people loved.
Well, people still love them, but I think there's like that sort of like some people love them, some people hate them, and both sides are kind of counter signaling a little bit and pretend like people who hate them will be like, oh yeah, great, and people who love them will be like, oh yeah, great, get out. Like usually the people who like them will be will like show a lot more intense hate, whereas people who hate them will just like not acknowledge them. It's sort of that thing of like the accepted response to puns is intense hatred. Yeah, I think like that thing of like the stronger that no, get out thing, like that's almost kind of an affectionate response now.
Especially with like now puns are synonymous with dad jokes.
Yes.
It's like when a dad makes a joke that is a pun, you are socially required to sigh.
Yeah. And pretend you're embarrassed even if you're not. That's sort of like, Dad, what are you doing? Yeah. Well, I don't know. Does everybody else's dads do that sort of stuff?
He didn't until I made a pun around him, and then it all went downhill.
Oh, okay. Like that sort of opened the floodgates.
Yep. He's really good at them. Better than me.
What about you guys? Does that like?
Yeah, Dad has his dad jokes that are just probably have the same reaction. You know, causing that awkward air.
Yeah, my dad does too. There's this really dumb one. It's really hard to explain, but anyway, it's like whenever I say, "Oh, but I thought," he makes this really bad one. It's you know what thought the light was off, so he lit a match to see. It's one of those really terrible.
My grandpa used to make that joke, actually. Like one of my grandpa on my mum's side, had a whole lot of sayings that he just I see said the blind man, and he couldn't see at all.
Yeah, like those types of things.
Yeah, those types of.
Thought his foot was out of bed, so he got up to see.
Okay. well, I don't know. Do you have any sort of personal favorite ones, or like sort of favorite?
They're all pretty
patterns?
awful.
They're all pretty awful. But there's a few sort of jokes that sort of tend to come up repeatedly, or patterns like, "Oh, hi, hungry, I'm Dad," or that sort of one, which is getting a lot of mileage at the moment in online circles, I think.
A little too much mileage.
I'm laughing because my dad does do the hungry joke.
Yeah,
it's so true.
Well, there's this one that I saw recently, which I think it was a Tumblr post, which is doing the rounds, which is you know, like a teenage son going, "Hey, Mum, Dad, I'm gay," and then there's this build up of the dad going like I'm stifling this reaction, I've got to do it, and the mum's like, no, don't do it, and then he just bursts out, "Hi, gay, I'm Dad."
The actor for that was really good because he looks like he's about to explode, with rage, and then
like that sort of oh, no son of mine's gonna be and so there's this sort of cross-pollination between different expectations happening there. This just sort of used really well.
Yeah.
But I can't even I still I've been seeing that around for weeks, and I can't help laughing every time I see it. But yeah, so
part of the reason, though.
Thanks for the save. Go for it.
Part of the reason we were talking about rockets before.
Yeah.
I can't get Matt Damon out of my head now.
Yeah, that's what you were talking about.
We were talking about
We're talking about space movies.
Yeah. Rockets of Coffee and Space, and The Martian, which came out a while ago, but I still haven't seen. Has anyone seen it?
No, but if I had, I would spoil it for you.
Well done.
I didn't spoil anything.
I know, because you made up a story. It was me that spoiled it by going onto the internet to a spoiler website to see what happened.
I didn't pull the trigger.
No,
I just gave you the gun.
I know. True.
Oh, man. So, I have this thing where I really like Matt Damon movies, not necessarily because of how good he is at acting, but how sort of blank-faced he is throughout them. And yeah, we were talking about Keanu Reeves before with this as well.
Yeah.
I really like actors that can physically move through a set, as I think you described.
Yeah. One of my because the subject of Keanu Reeves came up, and we're talking about him being what was it? Good at action, but not good at the other stuff. Because of the whole blank face thing. And yeah, I sort of related that to Buster Keaton. And I'm kind of sad that you guys haven't seen The General, because that is an amazing film. Like, everybody talks about Charlie Chaplin, but Buster Keaton was kind of his rival, if anything. But like the story goes, basically, Buster Keaton was an acrobat before he was an actor, and he was known as Stoneface. Like, that was basically his like sort of nickname. And like, what he would do, like, he did a lot of physical comedy, where basically, like, you know, he'd have this set lined up in front of him with like 10 different things going on, and like, you know, a whole lot of obstacles in his way, and he would move through it like water. Just like, you would not, like, you wouldn't be able to see how he was doing it unless you were like sort of going through a frame by frame, and even then you'd be, you know, it'd be like, well, you know, how does a person even do that? And like that was his shtick, that he was able to do these things. But the other side of it was that, like, even though like you barely see any facial expression, you can sort of like, when the camera lingers on like just sort of a still moment for a little bit, you can just sort of see really subtle shifts. So he doesn't have the big movements with his face. He just has really small ones that are like barely perceptible. And it ends up being really expressive. Like, even though he's like, his whole reputation is that he doesn't have expressions.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the principle that you're describing, that like, you can sort of project stuff or sort of see like the barely there.
Yeah, I think that like, when you have an actor who doesn't necessarily show emotion on their face, or does but in that sort of subtle way. Micro cues.
Yeah.
You can sort of, based on how the camera works and what the director gets people to do around them, you can sort of see this whole, you can create your own emotion around that character. Like, watching The Matrix, objectively, Neo doesn't react to shit. He just sort of goes through the motions of living in the Matrix. But then when you watch the movie as a whole, like, if you watch any one shot, it's like, he's not doing anything that specifically makes him Neo. You watch the entire movie, you get really attached to this character who doesn't react to anything. And I was sort of like really enjoying that. And I think Matt Damon is another kind of that sort of person for me, because he doesn't emote. He's like, he watches people die left, right, and center, and he doesn't overly react to the situation. There's no like rain pouring down, him looking at the heavens, Shawshank Redemption style shot. But you feel like that character, what that character should feel, and really it's sort of creating that atmosphere where, what the hell am I talking about? It gives you a body to watch the film through.
Yeah. Well, I think though, like, there are probably solid arguments for and against doing that in different situations. Like, because, you know, for example, you know, one of the probably a good recent example of like sort of backlash against that would be, you know, the entire Twilight series, where you have you know, Kristen Stewart, who, like, in other stuff, you know, she's actually or like, you know, if you see like interviews with her or all that sort of stuff, she's actually a really expressive person, but she's got all that sort of like toned down in the movies, where like she just blank face the whole time. And like the idea behind that is that, you know, anyone could be her, and you're sort of projecting onto that. But there's a huge sort of, not necessarily fan backlash, but critical backlash against doing that, because it's like, well, she's not acting, quote unquote.
Yeah. And
I don't know if that's because it's like the whole blank face thing done poorly in this case, like with poor micro cues or something.
I think in this case it's actually more than that. Okay, how many of you have watched the commentary for Twilight?
I haven't even watched the films.
Me either.
I haven't read the books either.
So I have this thing where if I like a film or really don't like a film, I'll listen to the commentary. Or if the film stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's the best.
Yeah.
But Twilight, there's some really telling things in it where they're talking to the actors about how they were directed for the scenes. And one of the scenes is she sees something that triggers a flashback, and she's like, so I come onto the set and the director's like, now look at this guy's shoes and then make your eyes move really quickly as if you're having a flashback. And then someone else is like, so what did you do? And she's like, I moved my eyes really quickly and pretended I was having a flashback. Like, there's no real direction for what the character was actually meant to be doing in that.
So they didn't actually give a background to how they should act. They were only saying what was on screen.
Yeah.
That's not how you direct.
Yeah, that's really sort of like, it's one of those things where you can never like sort of play to a specific audience response. And this is going back to the whole stone-faced like projection thing. If you're playing to a specific reaction, like both in writing and acting and everything else, then, like, you're sort of telling the audience to react through, like the result is that you'll give out micro cues that, like, it's particularly prominent in comedy, actually, like where a lot of jokes that sort of don't work out, it'll be because the comedians sort of anticipated a laugh, and they're trying to make the audience laugh. And so the micro cues that they're giving out are this thing of please laugh, like, oh, aren't I funny, or isn't this joke funny? Whereas what kind of needs to happen is they need to be able to sort of let the character or the story or the moment or like the payoff or whatever else just be funny or emotional in itself.
Not force it, kind of.
Yeah. Because as soon as you're playing to a specific reaction, suddenly you're forcing it. And sorry, I kind of interrupted you partway through there, I think.
That's actually pretty much exactly what we were sort of talking about. Like,
yeah.
I really like watching. Someone edited out the claps, the applause from sitcoms, and it's the funniest thing because those people cannot talk.
Yeah, there was one. It was Big Bang.
Yeah.
And it just seemed awful. You know the bit on The Simpsons where Mr. Burns takes over the TV and he has his own sitcom. You're home already? Yes. That is what Big Bang was like.
That Mr. Burns. Yeah.
Because you're like, what is this show? It's not funny.
The best one is like whenever Sheldon does his like punchlines and like the reaction to it, it looks as if they're really thinking of a way they can say their reaction to the punchline without offending the character.
Yeah.
It's like, bazinga! And they're like, yes.
Yeah. Well, there's that sort of comedic build-up that's like sometimes the laugh track can actually cause sort of a build-up of comic tension. I think like just because it's like it's that anticipation that something else is coming, and sometimes it doesn't matter what that is, which is kind of a really cheap tactic, but it's effective.
Well, like it worked real. Something that I found that I've enjoyed a lot more with Live on Bowen. One of the reasons I really liked Live on Bowen was because it had a studio audience. Yeah. And so they'd say a joke and they'd applaud, and I'd find the joke a lot funnier than had the audience not been there. Yeah. It's like a communal, like, ha ha ha, this is funny.
I have to agree with that because Misguided had their own audience as well. And sometimes I actually did sit in the audience, and I agree with you. It was, you look at it and be like, oh yeah, it's funny because everyone else is laughing. And,
and that really helped because Misguided was a lot about the audience throwing ideas out, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, how did that actually play out? Because when I saw the proposal, I was like, wow, this is risky.
Yeah, well, to be honest, it went well, like, really well, to be honest. There were a bit, like, probably one or two suggestions were like, we need another suggestion. That was probably edited out. But besides that, it actually worked.
Yeah. So that was like a whole sort of improv show. What was it? Was it like mainly based on improv, or?
Yeah, pretty much.
Or impro, as some people call. I can never remember which one's. One of them's supposed to be the Australian pronunciation, and the other one's supposed to be the American. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you there.
So it was like characters that reacted differently to a scene depending on the audience suggestions. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
That kind of makes sense.
So like differently to like an existing scene, or?
So, so they did follow, and then like something else would happen, and then they'd have to like kind of fix it. Just say like someone said teddy bear, and then they'd like have to try and fix it with the teddy bear. It was just kind of like that.
It's like the characters all knew who they were, and the characters were set, but what happened was up to the audience. It was like a really different take on Thank God You're Here.
Yeah, basically like that, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, that's about all we have time for. So we're actually going to have to wrap this up. But this has been Provisionally Approved, and I'm Mike Gorrie.
I'm Jack Worthington.
I'm Taylah Jayde.
I'm Frank McKenna.
Thanks for watching and or listening in, and we'll see you next time.
If you really enjoyed that, you can watch more content here and here.